You should not feel obligated to explain yourself to anyone unless it helps building the relationship. I'm Paula, the girl that sits here every Tuesday to just talk about things that happen to all of us but that we don't talk about enough. And today I wanted to talk about how to let go of that need to be constantly explaining yourself to everyone or trying to make them agree with you. Why are you trying so hard to convince other people to think like you all the time? Why does it matter? Stop explaining yourself to others and destroying yourself in the process. I know there are moments in which you have to explain yourself, like maybe if you're on an argument with someone and they misunderstood something you said or did and you need to explain yourself. That's fine, that's normal, it's necessary, and this video is not about that. It's about the times in which you feel like you need to explain yourself to others as if you were looking for their validation or even permission, or maybe as if you were looking for their consent on your point of view, decisions, actions, etc. And then you just get super frustrated because you just can't make the other person see the things like you, or you can't make them realize that they're wrong. Listen, you don't need other people's validation or approval to make your life decisions. The only person who knows what's best for you, it's you. You don't owe an explanation to anyone if you don't want to give it. And this doesn't only apply to decision making, it applies to any situation in which you just don't want to explain yourself. I know we always feel obligated to do things perfectly, but the problem is that what's perfect, it's different depending on the person. So doesn't matter what you do, there will always be people judging you and questioning you for those things you're making or those decisions you are taking. And honestly, it's just easier to do whatever you want, whatever feels like it's right for you and not for others. Because even if you're trying to please a particular person, there will be someone else who is not okay with that and who will start questioning you about it. It really is easier to make whatever decision you want to make about you. And if someone else judges that or questions that, you simply say, mind your own business, bitch. Like, people don't even need to be all up in your business anyways. And even if they actually don't care that much. They just want to judge you in that moment or question you because you did something that it's not okay for them. But they don't actually care about what you do. It's not like their life is going to be over because you chose the wrong thing. You don't need people to approve the way you dress, what you eat, if your body changes, if you do or don't do your makeup, etc. Them understanding and accepting your personal choices only adds a feeling of being accepted, and that's it. That's the only value it adds to your life. And I know feeling accepted, it's great, but remember that the people who actually care for you won't even make you feel like you need their approval for you to feel confident in your choices. Now, it's also important to realize that you don't need to convince people to think like you, and it honestly gives you so much peace of mind because I don't know if you've noticed, but we tend to stress so much about people just having different opinions, especially when it's about something radical or something that's important for us, because in our heads it just doesn't make sense. How can someone be so wrong and doesn't understand that they're wrong? And I get it, it's really frustrating. But the truth is that they feel exactly the same way that you do. For them, you're the one that is wrong, and they feel equally frustrated with the fact that you just don't accept that you're wrong. So those type of conversations really don't lead to anywhere, especially because our beliefs tend to be really rooted in our identity. So when someone says that what we believe is wrong, it feels like they're saying that we are wrong. And that's just like a huge punch in the ego of people. So let's say that you actually convince them and they realize they're wrong. They're probably not going to accept it, especially if there are other people around, because as I said, our beliefs are connected to our identity, and most people's pride is just way too big to accept they're wrong. So even if you manage to convince them, they're still not going to accept it, and they're still going to be fighting you and complaining about this and just standing up for whatever they are defending, simply to just don't accept they're wrong. So it really is not worth it to just try and put so much energy into convincing other people to try and think like you, because they're not going to accept it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't speak up for yourself. Of course you should, if the situation warrants it. Because let's be honest, is it really worth to fight your grandma every family dinner about reproductive rights? No. So just remember that you don't have to keep destroying yourself trying to make people agree with you, especially if there's nothing you get out of that but simply the fact that, wow, you just convince someone to think like you, and that's it. So instead of causing yourself a hell lot of stress and getting mad at other people and making other people mad at you, just say and move on. Whenever someone says something that you don't agree with and you realize that it's not worth the fight, just go and say okay, whatever, and move on. Learn to identify the situations in which it's worth to stand up for yourself and for your opinions and beliefs, and the situations in which it's just a fight over whose opinion is correct. And if it's the last one, don't engage in it, okay? At the end, you're just gonna end up being super stressed because the other person is just not going to agree that you are the one that's right, especially if that's happening in public. And at the end, all you're going to get from that is frustration. You don't have to convince them, okay? It's not your job to be a vigilante that just brings enlightenment to everybody. That's not your job. You're just gonna get super frustrated because people are not going to all of a sudden change their mind just because you say so. So stop trying to convince other people and stop looking for their approval to make your own decisions. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I send you a massive hug, and remember that you are not alone. See you next week.